Hello, and welcome back to the Collin Cadmus Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Meredith Chandler. Meredith is the VP of Sales at Aligned, where she's led her team to a 45% win rate and drove ACV up 4x for mid-market and 30% for SMB. Align has grown a world-class brand on LinkedIn through sharing organic content, which now accounts for roughly 65% of their leads, and they recently closed a Series B round of $60 million. Meredith started her sales career at Yelp and then went on to Indeed, Samsara, Spiff, and CaptivateIQ before landing her current role at Aligned. Needless to say, she's been crushing it for a long time, and I'm excited to get her thoughts on all that's changing in B2B sales and find out how she's making this magic happen so quickly at Aligned. Before we get started, if you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave us a comment if you have questions or feedback. If you're joining us from Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please drop us a review and let us know what you think of the episode. This is much appreciated. Without further ado, let's dive in and get her thoughts. Meredith, thanks for joining me and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Collin. I am thrilled to be here.
Likewise, it's been a long time coming. I've had, and I say this to everyone I've had on the show, but I have like a very long list of people that I want to interview. And I do this podcast not on a regular schedule. I sort of do it as I feel like doing it. And I kind of go in sprints. I do a bunch of episodes, then I get sick of it. And I'm like, I'm taking a break and then I come back. But I have this ever running list and you have been on it for a long time. So I'm glad to finally make it happen. And I want to start at really the top here. And I don't usually start with the specifics, but I realize that people need the context. And so it's a little bit easier to start with like the lay of the land. So can you tell us how big is your sales team and kind of just break it down by role, how many people you've got in each role there?
Yes. Today at Align, the sales team is around 30 people in total. And that includes managers, directors. We've got, or will have around 10 AEs by the end of this quarter. We've got 12 BDRs. We've got 5 CSMs and a partridge in a pear tree, I guess.
So you're overseeing CS as well?
I don't oversee it right now. I took it on earlier in the year, and we have a fantastic VP of sales who now oversees that.
Awesome. A VP of sales or a VP of CS?
VP of CS, sorry.
Got it. Okay, so they split the two. That makes sense. It's a lot to take all of that on. They're all full-time jobs, right? Managing AE, managing SDR, and CS is like a completely other world. I do think CROs can do it, but you need VPs underneath, right? So otherwise, it's just way too much. But so you have almost a 1-to-1 ratio of BDR to AE. Is the plan to keep it that way? Is that the right ratio for you guys?
Yes, we have a 1-to-1 right now, but we keep them on a round robin system. And that way everybody gets to work with everybody in the org. A lot of different learnings that way, different working styles. It's not like a 1-to-1 pairing and you're just in that 1-to-1, definitely.
You guys using Chili Piper for that?
We are.
Yeah. It's amazing. They've done such a good job building something that I could be wrong, but at least when I set it up, because I used it as well, there was nothing that could do exactly what it could do. And I'm like, well, what about Calendly? What about this? Like nothing could do it. And somehow it seems like maybe that's still the case. I haven't found anything that's replaced it, right?
You're absolutely right. And we haven't even looked at other tools to replace it because it could be a combination of, I don't know if that exists yet, or we're just so happy with Chili Piper. But
awesome.
It's a prime example of finding a need that the market actually needs solving it, and not going into so many outside lanes like we're seeing everyone do today, right? We're seeing products, all these different products under the sun now come up with call recorders. And we even see it in our sector. People are trying to come up with digital sales rooms, and everyone's doing all these spin-offs, especially with the AI, and everyone thinks they can just build it in-house. And it's a true testament of just, picking something that you can really master and just really making that product top notch.
Yeah, they're crushing it. And I remember when I signed up for them, I never buy anything without getting a discount, just because from being on the other side of that equation, you kind of know there's always flexibility and whatnot. And I remember sort of having it out with them, and I love them. They're both amazing. But he would not discount for me like at all. And eventually we came crawling back. Like I tried the whole hard to get, like, I don't know, we're looking at some, but he just knew what he had. He knew that like they built features that no one else could do. And my guess is that like Calendly's of the world, they were sort of just like thinking that maybe it's a small niche market, which is completely not true. But it's pretty awesome that they've, I don't want to go on a whole tangent about Chili Piper, but it's pretty cool to see that like all these years later, they're still sort of the go-to.
We're happy with them, so they deserve some love. They definitely deserve a shout out. So yes.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. And we benefited from it in the same way that you're describing, where we did the round robin and it allowed us to not have to necessarily pair up an AE with an SDR. Everything was nice and equal. If someone's on vacation, you just make a little tweak in the system. And then there was really no complaining, right? Because people will say, well, he has the better SDR. That's why he's beating me in the quota attainment, right? So when you go just, and maybe this was sort of that Yelp single platform DNA, but my goal was always to make everything as fair as possible. I said to myself, like, every time there's a common complaint from a rep, I want to find a way to make that complaint impossible, right? And then it just eventually you get as close to fair as you can possibly be.
Agreed. And that's exactly why we have it set up that way. And you and I were both reps at one point, right? We're always going to find something to complain about. And so
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with your mantra of if there is a complaint, let's nip it in the bud, let's get way ahead
Yeah.
of it, and let's make it a non-starter. So this is the way that we do that, is with a round robin. And then again, just the exposure to different mindsets, different ways of working, different working relationships too, right? It's just better development for both each BDR and each AE.
Yeah, and you end up with better service for the prospects too, right? Because you don't have to wait on their AE to be in the office. Like you can have the fastest response time and all that sort of stuff for inbounds and whatnot. So I'm with you. How do you guys decide when you're going to hire more AEs? Is this like, do you guys have like a headcount quota that your investors are telling you like, hey, we need, you got 10 people now, we need 50 by the end of the year? Or are you sort of looking at your demand and trying to balance things? Because I know I'll give you a little shout out. Like you guys are in, I forget that you're in the top percentile on RepView. So I imagine you're doing, better than average on quota attainment, which means you're doing something right. So, and I know for me, this often always comes back to the hiring. Of course, maybe you have shitty products. There's a million reasons you could miss quota, but I think one of the most common industry wide is you just have too many people and not enough demand. So how do you think about that?
Yes, we try to grow very thoughtfully and responsibly, but also keeping in mind that we are a business that wants to grow and is expected to grow. So hiring AEs is always a delicate balance of looking at the data. And we have, a 1,000 cell Excel where we track every little thing you could imagine and things you wouldn't even imagine, right? So you combine that, but also you have to take a leap of faith at some point, because if you wait until every rep is at complete capacity and completely maxed out, demand is spilling over, you've waited too long at that point.
Yes.
And if you think about ramping an AE, so if you wait to that point and then you realize and then you think, oh, I need to hire somebody, well, now you're in a hiring cycle and then you're in a ramping cycle. And so your AEs are still at capacity, and that's a disservice to your customers as well. So what we do at Aligned is, in that 1,000 cell Excel sheet is we look at the demand we have today, the demand we expect to create. So future growth, forecasting growth. We look at things like our conversion rates, our AE ramp time, the growth targets of the business. And so it's something that we review regularly, but you can only math it for so long and you can only look at the equations so many different ways. And Gal, our CEO, and I are constantly looking at it, but there comes a point where you have to make a calculated bet. And so we look at things like, our SMB team has a 40% close rate, and we look at ramp times and we look at overall attainment, and those success clues tell us that, okay, you can take this leap of faith. If we were behind on ramp times, if we didn't have a strong close rate, if we didn't have a strong conversion rate, we probably wouldn't be taking as strong or as big leaps of faith.
Are you guys hiring all AEs from the outside, or do you promote SDRs, or is it a split? How do you do that?
Yes, we're very big on internal promotions. So we have a career path that we're very proud to present to anyone that steps in the sales org on their second or third day with us. So it goes all the way from BDR1 to BDR2 to SMB AE to mid-market AE to what will eventually be a true enterprise and strat AE. And so there's very clear success criteria, exit criteria, development criteria, working with your manager on the hard and soft skills. And so we do a little bit of both. We promoted our top SMB rep within 1 year. Our second top SMB rep is about to be promoted. Our third is well on his way. Our SDR org is a little bit newer, but we're about to have our first promotes there. I was recently promoted, so we've got a healthy blend of each. Thank you. And so we are really big on hiring internally, but there's also a lot of value in getting fresh blood, right? Fresh eyes, new perspectives, people who have worked at various successful orgs who can take things that were working there and bring it to aligned.
Yeah, we're really cut from the same cloth. I mean, it's exactly how I think about it. Then do you start ramping SDRs for the AE role before they're actually in it? Like they reach a certain stage of the program and you're going to start getting them ready, so they're sort of on deck at a certain point, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was the one thing that really helped me manage the headcount, because I could get them ready and primed and they're sitting on deck and it's like they're itching, ready to go. But they also know, like, they're looking at our demand and our pipeline too. And so we're talking about this together as a team. And sometimes we'll even just decide as a team, like, hey, do we want to do this month, or do we want to punt it like another month and build some more pipeline? And once the team is so well versed on all of this and they see it go well, they see it not go well, they will even say, like, at a certain point, they'll be like, I'd rather wait a month or two. Like, I want to have the pipeline. Like, let's do this. We're doing this big marketing thing. Like, let's wait and let's do it right. And so I eventually was able to really involve the team in that discussion. I remember coming in one day it was like a quarterly kickoff meeting that I used to do. I used to do like quarterly roundtable meetings, give out some awards and sort of talk about plans. And I remember just throwing out my whole like presentation the morning of, because something in my gut didn't feel right about it. And we were going to raise quotas. We were going to do all these things. And I eventually was just like, you know what, let me brainstorm this with the team. And I just walked them through. I was like, here's what I was going to present to you today. Here's why I'm unsure of it. And here's why I think it would be better if we just make this decision as a team, because there's two ways that we could go here. One is we could raise everyone's quota because we have to hit this stretch number and we have to do this and all this stuff. Or we could hire more people, or what we could do is, like, we could keep the team the same, focus on pipeline, but we can just know as a team that everyone needs to hit 120% this month, or we're just not going to hit the company target, right? And so it doesn't mean you're going to get fired if we don't get to the 120, but it means we know if we don't hire more people, you're getting more pipeline. So what do you prefer? Do you want me to bring in 2 or 3 more AEs, promote a few more, and the pipeline's going to get split up? Or do we want to go this other route where we all just say, hey, we're going to go crazy this month and we're going to have excess pipeline, but we're all going to try to hit that 120 mark. If you hit 100%, you keep your job, like, you're crushed it either way. But for the company to succeed, like, we need to hit this bigger number. And I remember it was one of our best quarters ever. The whole team rallied around it. They got super excited for it. And I was like, wow, sometimes, like, there's real nuance to, like, how you can make this stuff work. But yeah, a lot of it just came down to knowing when those promotions, needed to happen. And also I just wanted to mention, because you getting to work with Gal is gotta be pretty awesome, right? I mean, correct me if my memory is wrong, but he's a sales CEO, right? Like, he comes from a sales background.
Yes, he's the best. I absolutely love working with him. Yes.
Yeah, so he actually knows what he's talking about when it comes to sales combos. Because I know you'll say, like, I talked to Gal, I'll brainstorm with Gal, like, and I've had a CEO or two who were like that. But then most people get stuck with a CEO who kind of has never been in sales, and I mean, hopefully they just stay out of it, but sometimes they want to stay in it and they're just telling you all sorts of wrong stuff. And you're like, half my job is like training my CEO on sales, right?
You're so right. And it's so funny that you mentioned that because it's what I think is a great selling point when we're hiring. And I hire a
Yeah.
lot and I'm constantly interviewing candidates. And I can see that that is a selling point. And I kind of see salespeople's their eyes light up. And I say,
Yeah.
you'll have not only a sales leader and coaching through myself, but our CEO is a top salesperson as well, 20 years in the industry and just phenomenal insight, like you're saying. Also, our CPO worked with him at a sales
Oh, that's right.
organization
Yeah.
previously, which is just like a cherry on top because you bring an engineer in, you bring a product person. They're not always savvy in the ways of selling to prospects, right? Or selling to clients. And there are times where we'll just have our CPO Galdish on a call and he'll say, okay, you guys go take another call. Very rarely can you leave a technical or an engineering person on a call without a salesperson as well.
Yeah.
And to your point, very rare, it's just very rare that the executive team, the C-suite has such collective sales experience because I also coach leaders. I coach sales managers, fellow VPs, and the stuff that they tell me of their non-technical C-suite, like you said, half the
Yeah.
job then becomes just educating
Yeah.
the sales tactics for the C-suite. So yes,
Yeah.
I am
And you have
very
to sell
fortunate.
them, right? At a certain point, it becomes you're pitching your boss on your own expertise. And it starts to feel like every day is an interview, right? Because you're like, I got this thing I want to do, and your CEO's like, well, I need to take a look. And now I need to understand it. And now I have questions. And it's like, do you want to do the job? Like, I don't know that I need to be here if this is the road we're going down. So yeah, it's awesome working with sales leaders. At Single Platform, the founder was a salesperson lifelong. He built the seamless web Salesforce, which is now Grubhub. And so we got to work with him, which was just incredible. And it created a sales culture from top down throughout the whole company. And for you guys, I would be willing to bet that it actually has a lot to do with the success of the product itself because you're making a product for salespeople and buyers. And so he just gets it, right? And this is probably why many of your competitors have tried and failed at building, deal rooms and stuff. So yeah. And I think I said that, by the way, for the audience. I interviewed Gal a few episodes ago. So if you want to check that out as well, it is in there. But so coming from Yelp, we chatted about this before we started. I know a lot about the Yelp sales culture. They had a huge office in New York. We hired a bunch of people from them. We might have even traded some people back and forth over the years. But we started in what I consider, I guess it's because of our era, I consider it to be like the traditional sales model, right? Where you're doing a bunch of pounding the phones. I would imagine at Yelp, you were not doing a bunch of research on each account. You probably just pulled up their Yelp page and gave them a call, or maybe you just had it in Salesforce. And it was the same for us. We didn't do a bunch of research. We pretty much just pulled up a lead, smile and dial. And we knew what our spiel was, and we knew how, like, we would pop up the restaurant website, like, while the phone's ringing. So our research is like in real time, and we just pull a couple things. And we just had it down to such a science, but so much has changed since then. So looking back, what do you think has changed the most? And especially because you've moved into the enterprise. You're not selling to storefronts anymore, which was the same transition I made going into air call. And there was a lot to learn there. So, just zooming out, what's the biggest change for you?
Wow, Colin, you're really dating us here with our
Isn't it weird? Because it still feels like yesterday, though, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. A good old smile and dial. What's funny is I can actually distinctly remember like where I was
Yeah.
seated in the office when I made my very first cold call ever.
Same.
So we
Same.
didn't have parallel dialers like you're
Nope.
saying. You were doing just that,
We had a
pulling up the
hard phone on
restaurant.
the desk with a headset plugged into it. If my manager wanted to listen to my call, he had to come and plug his headset into a splitter at my desk. That was the only way he could listen to me. Or we got recordings that would drop down like later that night in an email or something. Like it was a horrible system. That's part of the reason I loved AirCall, because I was like, wow, if we had this like at single platform, this would have been awesome. Like, you mean to tell me you can listen to someone's call like while they're not even in the office? Like, yeah, it was
Yeah, sellers
it
don't
was
know
different.
how good they have it. And I feel like our era is the equivalent to our parents saying, I walked to
Yeah,
school 2 miles in the snow.
yeah,
But yes, a lot has changed. I mean, even more context, when I was selling at Yelp, Google reviews were just being launched, and we weren't even convinced that they would really make it. So
we were
again,
selling mobile websites, and we had to explain to a restaurant owner what that even meant. This was
precisely.
2012. Like, it feels like yesterday, but it's been a long time.
So yeah, it's really dating ourselves, but I think there are a few key big changes, and I'd say number one, in today's day and age, the buyer has far more power now and a lot less patience. And what do I mean by that is that sales back in our day was kind of the gatekeeper to everything you would need to actually make a purchase, right? You had to go to a salesperson to understand pricing, to get a product demo, to understand the benefits, the functionality. All of that today is so readily and easily available online that the Gardner studies show and other studies show that the majority of buyers don't even want to talk to a salesperson.
Yeah.
If you think about it, you can buy anything on your phone today, right? You can buy a freaking Tesla delivered to your front door on a phone. And so with that, buyers really expect relevance immediately. You have to come to a call and provide a really strong POV. You can't really just pull up the website like we were joking
Yeah.
about anymore and pretend like you know what you're talking about. You really, even on a cold call, especially on a demo, you have to provide value right away. And on a demo, it's no longer, okay, thanks for taking the time, Collin. I'm going to ask you a few questions now. No, you have to come with, hey, Collin, I read your last 10K, or I listened to your last earnings call and I saw da 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 da, and that typically means yada yada yada, right? So I'd say that's the first change that I see. And then the second change, you already kind of mentioned it, is the death to spray and pray. Smile and dial, let her rip. Yes, we were kind of riffing about this before the podcast, but the great things about where you and I got our sales training is it was really great sales training. We were responsible for, or at least at Yelp, 80 dials per day and 2.5 hours of talk time. Now, you were sharing with me, you had even more responsibilities. You had to book 10 demos per day for the following
Yeah.
day, and you had to host 5 of those. So, really strong metrics and really great habit building. And I think part of the talk time was, okay, if you get a no, you better find your way to some sort of yes, right? And so what you and I were selling to storefronts, okay, yeah, Colin's not in right now. Well, when is he typically in? Like, what's a good time to call him? What matters to call in? When I do call him, like, what should I tell him? Oh, you're like really far removed from that side of the house. Like, what is it that you do? Like, what do you care about in terms of the business? Like, okay, who else should I maybe be talking to instead? You were really forced and trained to extract information to
Mhm.
get you closer to a yes. So I think, again, in today's day and age, there's no more spray and pray. There's just so much information available that you should be extracting that on your own. And, I get 20 to 25 cold emails a day. And sadly, a lot of them are still not very relevant. They're, again, just a lot of spray and pray, which I just don't think there's any excuse for today. The outreach needs to be intentional. It needs to be purposeful. And yes, there's power in numbers, but it has to be very deliberate because, again, if you're reaching out to somebody like myself who has 25, 30 emails a day, I'm only going to respond to the ones that I really think could be worth my time.
I actually think they're getting worse. At least the emails that land in my inbox, I'm getting more of them too, and even blocking them doesn't seem to work anymore. And I can tell they're AI. Like, that's why I don't feel bad blocking them. So I'm getting so many of them. and they will say the stupidest things. That, like, the name of my consultancy is just Collin Cadmus LLC, and I love that because it shows me how lazy everyone is when they reach out to me, because they use it like it's a company name, and they're like, "Hey, I can see you're working hard over at Collin Cadmus," and and it's like, okay, I'm not even reading this because this wasn't written by a human. But you block them now, and it's like there's a new email address the next day that's like following up with you, and they somehow copy paste the thread from the other email to make it look like it's like it's crazy what's going on. But yeah, yeah.
That's terrible. That's a good litmus test, though. I would +1 your blocking MO there. And the other
Yeah.
thing that I fall victim to is I pick up cold calls every once in a while. Like if there's a tech out there that can genuinely help us, I want to know about it. Like what leader doesn't want their team to be more efficient, generating more revenue? So I'll pick up an occasional cold call. But what I'm finding now, Colin, is there are other techs that will share the information of how often you pick up cold calls, and they sell that. So I'm now marked as somebody who's likely to pick up on cold calls.
Oh,
And so ever since I like actively started picking up to, make improvements to my own team, I now get so many calls a day that most of them aren't relevant.
yeah.
It's kind of a slippery slope.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. And once you get on the call too, I have so much empathy for salespeople that I want to listen. And then I'm like, if they're not doing good, it's like, do I want to coach them? And like, will they even receive that, in a good light? And it's just, yeah, it can be tough. It definitely can.
I'm with you. I struggle with that as well. As a former teacher, I I kind of force the feedback on them. Not force, I do always ask them and I'll say like, "Hey, I respect the hell out of what you're doing right now. Like keep smiling, keep dialing. Like you're going to find someone that is a good fit for you. While I have you, like, would you be open or even interested in a little feedback on this call?" And most
Yeah,
of them are really receptive to it. And I bet they would be really appreciative of yours too, if you're
yeah,
willing to give it.
yeah, yeah.
If it warrants, like, did they try? Did they research a little bit? If it's just like completely irrelevant, I don't think they deserve your feedback because feedback is a gift.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Do you know if do you still keep in touch with anyone at Yelp? Do you know if they're still following the same, outreach playbook? Like I would imagine single platform probably is doing a bit of the same stuff, but I think it's just unique when it's storefronts, right? With the cold calling, like they might still be able to get away with sort of those fast cold calls because they're just calling a restaurant. But do you know if they've changed it up?
I don't. That's a great question. Yeah, I have no idea.
That might be the one exception, and I just like to point that out to people because I've had people reach out and they're like, "Well, we still pound the phones $100 a day." I'm like, "Are you calling small businesses like storefronts?" And I'm like, "Okay, like that might be the one area where it kind of still works, especially restaurants, right? I don't know if you were calling on restaurants, but you don't know who's going to answer the phone there, and it's often not the owner." And it could be just a different person every time, and you have to get creative to like figure out how to get to the owner. And we used to just call and like just act like we knew the owner. And yeah, is Joe there? It's Colin. And they're like, "Oh, well, it sounds like he knows him." I'm like, "Here, Joe." And he's like, "Who's it? Colin?" Yeah, it's Colin. I mean, and it's like we would just do all this stuff. They would hang up on you, and we would just call them back. Hey, I think we got disconnected. Like, it was just this like assumptive sort of like it was a little slimy, but like you kind of had to be in order to get through that, right?
Yes, those are
Yeah,
some of the tactics. And again, like we'll just take it as training, right? Those
yeah,
assumptive tactics helped you assumptively close, multi-$100,000 deals later on. You
yeah,
got to start
yeah.
somewhere. You don't just hop into an enterprise sales role and assumptively ask for $100,000. You got to
Right.
start by assumptively asking to talk to the movie theater manager.
Yeah. And if you believe in what you're selling, like this is how we got our salespeople over it. It's like we believed in what we were selling and we saw the success of what happened after they signed up. And so the way I remember our VP of sales taught it to us, he's like, you have the cure for fucking Ebola. Like that's your mindset. You're showing up to a hospital filled with people who have Ebola and you have the cure. You're not taking no for an answer. There's no way you're going to save their life, no matter how you have to explain it, no matter how many times you have to knock on that door. There's no way you're walking away if you know you can save their life, right? And like that was the mindset that we went into it with, and so we didn't care what it took to get to the restaurant owner or the small business owner. If we got them on the phone, we just knew half the time, roughly, or whatever it was, if we get them through this, we're getting them signed up. But anyway, back to Aligned. I want to talk about the ACV. So you drove up ACV, and this is something that I know new VPs of sales, you first get your job. It's one of the metrics you want to look at pretty quickly because you're looking like, how can I move some needles here, right? And you can't necessarily just create a ton more pipeline overnight. You can't necessarily like jack your win rate up. That's going to take time. But ACV is something you could potentially move on a bit quicker, right? You can maybe change some prices or change how you're pitching things or change how you're packaging things. How did you go about that?
Yes, great question. And it goes back to exactly what we were talking about earlier, right? And you're mentioning different levers. Yes, do we throw more bodies at the problem, or do we look at everything we have and look to pull one of these levers, like you said, higher ACV, quicker close times, more land and expand, multi-product, lesser discounting. So yes, those are some of the initial KPIs that any leader will walk into. And so there's so many different things that go into it. And so I definitely cannot take all the credit for this. It goes way back to even just brand presence. And, Gal was on your podcast earlier, and you both talked a lot about the power of LinkedIn and what that's done for our brand, and the intentional and very deliberate posting that he's done to build the brand. And now I participate in the posting as well, and between the two of us, and we have some internal creators now as well. There's rarely a day, I would say at this point, I don't know if there exists a day where you log on to LinkedIn and you don't see Aligned in some form or fashion.
That's how I found out about Gal. It's that I saw him on LinkedIn and he writes really good content. And I remember when I first found him, I don't know if it's when he was first starting out, it might've been, but he picked it up so quickly, like how to write engaging content. He just got it, and he crushes it every day. Yeah, and you as well. I mean, it's just talk about seizing the moment, like to build a brand. Yeah, and I think I saw him write somewhere like we have $1 billion brand, on a startup budget, and it's like that's LinkedIn.
Yes, it's been so powerful, and he's done a great job. I think at one point it was driving his leads alone were driving 65% of our leads just from his LinkedIn thought leadership, and
and that's
now
organic, right? He's not paying to boost; he's just organic posting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we boost a little bit, but yeah, it was just astronomical. So building that brand, which, is something that attracted me to Align too. I would read his posts, and I would read the posts of other employees at Aligned at the time. And I'd think, wow, these are some really, really intelligent concepts. And I don't know everything that they're talking about. And so I would research some of the stuff that he was posting. And that's what really attracted me to the company as an applicant, right? And so then other people are drawn the same way to find a tool to help their team. And so I'd say that's the first bit of the foundation, is building this really strong brand. And then also what we talked about earlier, really strong product market fit. So the product is built for salespeople by salespeople. And so when we go on these sales calls, oftentimes our prospects are already very familiar with Aligned, not only from the posting, but when our team or when our customers sell to someone, a lot of times we get demo inbound forms that say, I was part of a sales process and we loved the Aligned room that our seller sent us. Now we want to check it out. So
that's the best.
Yes, it has a lot of virality, which is amazing. So
it's like the Notion effect, right? I call it the Notion effect, because every time someone shares you a Notion doc, you're like, you just signed up. Like, yeah.
Precisely. Yes. So there's that bit of it. And then the second bit in terms of sales tactics is we really strive to sell on value and not product features. So I think it's really easy for salespeople to get sucked into the realm of feature wars or this feature versus that
Mhm.
feature. I really harp on teaching quantifiable pain. So level 2, level 3 pain. We really teach making strong business cases, utilizing mutual action plans. And again, all of this can be done in the product. So we
Yeah.
teach this fervently, but then we also rely on the product to help us really bring it home. And so we try to steer clear of those feature wars, and then we try to get to power as quickly as we can, right? So we know, especially in today's day and age, going back to what you said earlier, what's really changed since you and I were, starting our careers. Money isn't falling off of trees anymore. VCs are
Yeah.
not writing the same checks that they were even just a few years ago. Pocketbooks are tighter. People aren't just, handing over checks. And so we are very well aware that tools that get bought are ones that have really compelling business cases. And so we really strive to uncover those in every single call that we have. So those are a few of the things. And I'd say lastly, also what we touched on earlier, delivering pricing with confidence. It's one thing to say, well, our price is $20,000, but it's end of quarter, so we can make a deal.
Yeah.
No, I'm selling the cure to Ebola over here,
Yes,
apparently.
exactly. Exactly.
Some of my, yeah, you just got to have the mentality of confidence in your pricing, and you do that by really uncovering a quantifiable pain. What is $20,000 if I'm going to help you recover 1 million, right? It's a drop in the bucket. So those are a few
Yeah.
of the things that we focus on.
Yeah, the discounting thing is huge and the delivery of price. I remember sitting next to a guy at Single Platform. I was kind of, I guess, lucky in a sense because I joined in a group of 16 new hires. We hired like these big cohorts every month. But I was like 4 years older than everyone else. They were all coming straight out of college. I was coming off of 4 years of working in retail management at CVS because I graduated in '08 and there were no jobs and it was a nightmare. And so they didn't have enough seats to like put me with my group. They had 15 seats. So I got to sit next to some experienced people on sort of just the other aisle. And I remember sitting next to this guy and people, he would pitch the price and they would ask for a discount and he would just say no. There was no explanation, nothing. And I was just like, wow, does that work? And I'm like, and I would just listen. I would take my headset off, like kind of eavesdrop on his call. I'm like, holy shit. And I'm like, how does that work, dude? And he's like, listen, you don't know if they really need the discount until you say no. Like most people are going to ask for it. So you just have to say no and make it just like, it's just a thing that we just don't do that. And you can just start there. And like half the time they'll just be like, okay. And they'll just move on and they're just ready to buy anyway. I mean, it was a relatively low price product. I want to say it was like $50 a month or something, which at the time for a restaurant was actually a significant expense. But, it wasn't, we weren't talking big numbers here. Whereas when you get into the enterprise, teaching people to have that confidence where you can just throw out a number where you're talking about numbers that are more than you deal with in your own life, right? Like you don't cut a check for 100 grand, but you're going to just ask them for one. And the more smooth that people get at that, the more casual they are with it, like it just, people will hand over that money and you will be very, very surprised.
Absolutely. I had a very similar experience in the enterprise space. I was a seller at Samsara and they sell GPS tracking for trucks and trucking companies. And my territory was Western Texas, so oil field, Texas, right?
They got money.
They got money, but they're a different breed. We love them, but very different from, I'm from San Francisco, little city slicker,
Yeah.
blonde haired girl walks into the office. I've got my little briefcase, and I had to go ask them for $500,000 up front. And I go into this prospect's office and he's got taxidermy all over the entire office. He's got taxidermy, I kid you not, Colin, eating other
Uh,
taxidermy. I was I was so scared. And he looked like that famous wrestler. What's his name? The really
John
muscly.
Cena?
Yes, he looked just like John Cena. And here I am, this, little girl from, not little girl, but, San Francisco. They probably don't see a lot of female sellers stepping into their office. And
Yeah.
I was mortified. I was just trying to get out of there without ending up on his wall as a piece of taxidermy myself. And so I asked him for $500,000 and I was so scared. And he asked for a discount. And I was so scared that I sat there in silence and he mistook it for confidence and he talked himself out of the discount. And so that's
Boom.
where I learned that, to your point, it can work on smaller deals, but
Yeah.
also bigger deals. And it just takes that one time. It just takes that, not giving and not conceding to really flip your mindset of, oh, wow, okay, what I'm selling is so valuable that I don't need to discount it.
Yeah. And it's so much of it is just the delivery, right? Like there's that person who's like, so it is 500,000 to get started. And then there's the person who's like, so 500K get started. That's the first thing. And they just like, it just sounds so different in just the way that you say it. So yeah, there's so much that can be done there. And with the discounting, I mean, that's another one that like when you come into a new team, sometimes you can just change those habits so quickly. And sometimes you just look at their incentives, right? I mean, I've come on sales teams before where they were allowed to discount and it actually didn't affect their commission. I'm like, well, this is why they're discounting on every deal, right? And the CEO's like, yeah, but it's not a big deal because what we do is like we only count the discount towards the first year and then it'll renew at the full price. And so when we count our ARR, we're actually not factoring in the discounts. I'm like, okay, so that sounds a little sketchy, but turns out like that's actually how a lot of companies do it is they do some weird financial games where like the discounts are a different line item. So they tell you they have this 100 million ARR, but you're like, how many of those contracts are still in the first year on a discount? And you're like, oh, you actually don't have cash flow of that. And it's so there's lots of games that people play with
Interesting.
that. But by when you factor it into their commission, like the discount comes off your actual contract value. Like sometimes it's as easy as making a change like that and boom, your ACV just went up in your first month as VP of sales because you just took a look at like how the incentive structure was set up. And now the reps are thinking, well, I don't want a discount. That actually fucks me over. So what am I doing here, right? So
Incentives can
yeah.
be a great lever. Yep.
Yeah, sometimes it just comes down to that. I always say like that's the first thing I'm going to look at when I come in. But I wanted to ask too, do you guys have solution engineers or sales engineers? Do you have, I didn't think so. And I just wanted to highlight there that like probably the reason that you get away with that is the same reason we got away with it at Aircall, which is that our team is using the product we're selling so they understand it inside and out. And so they don't even need the SE. And that just helps you move deals faster. You're less people on the call. You don't need to, hey, I'll call you back with an answer to that question. It's like I use this tool all day long. Like I can talk all the technical details of it. Huge advantage there.
Precisely. Oh, we use it
Huge.
for everything. Most applicants send an aligned deal room, an aligned job seeker room when they're even interviewing with us. So they're already familiar in the platform. I do their onboarding in an aligned room. So we use the mutual action plans to give them daily self-guided learning and then dedicated sessions with myself and cross-functional team members.
Mhm.
We use it for marketing briefs. So when we have big events coming up or if we have conferences, we use it. So yes, we use aligned for everything. So that's how we get away without using SEs.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a huge advantage. I've never had to have SEs. I've had maybe some people who's sort of like de facto, like an engineer who would just kind of come in as needed or something, but that wasn't their job. But I always just found it so much easier to make your AEs product experts rather than to have a separate person who like probably sucks at selling and like every time they get on the call they talk too much about the product and you have to kind of cut them off and like you really don't want them getting on calls alone because they're just going to talk forever about the product and like yeah it's you're in a good boat there. But what about this 45% win rate? I mean, were there I mean, I don't know how much you can say about sort of where it was before you got it up there, maybe it already was pretty high and you guys just jacked it up a little bit. But are there any sort of big lessons there or big maneuvers, levers to pull that worked for you?
Yeah, I would just double down on some of the things that we've been speaking about. So the 45% rate is specific to our SMB team. So they are our shining star. They have 45% close rate. I had one rep 2 quarters ago hit 176% of his quota. So kind of
Nice.
what we were talking about earlier, instead of over hiring, we just let some of them overachieve. So we do have two
Yeah.
segments. Yeah. And
And that doesn't mean you need to raise the quota. It means this is great. Let's get everyone to hit 170%. Like, this is wonderful because if you raise the quota, now you're going to take 2 reps to get that 170K and you're paying twice as much money. You need twice as many managers, twice as many licenses and desks and all of this stuff. It's like, I would much rather have a smaller team that's just absolutely destroying their quota month over month. Yeah.
precisely. Yeah. So it's kind of a perfect storm of that. And then again, what we were talking about earlier, prepping some of them to move up market into the mid market role. So we put them on the mid market round robin. So we put them on around 20%, let them get a few at bats because it is a different motion. And so we don't want to just plop them into that seat right
Mhm.
away. So we let them close bigger deals there as well. And then we allow them to outbound into the segment
Mhm.
that they're eventually going to be promoted into. But when we look at the actual measurement of the close rates, those are specific to the segment. So the 45% close rate is for the SMB team. So a lot of those things that we've discussed, just the strong branding, kicking up posting on LinkedIn to every single day. We used to only post maybe 2 to 3 times. We've now got our own podcast as well. We've got video form, we've got newsletters. So really kicking up the brand, but then also high emphasis on strong execution. So really focusing on qualification, that quantifiable pain, watching calls, watching call recordings. We have a lot of teaching and learning moments as well. So we do group call reviews where every week we
Mm.
dissect a team member's call in front of the entire team. So they get 8 people's feedback and it's not just mine. And Galaga will join, or we have a, very specific strategic deal review as well that Galaga leads. And so again, you get that sales expertise throughout the entire org, and it's not just limited to one person's feedback. So that combined with refining a repeatable process makes it easier to increase the close rate.
Can I ask you about those call reviews? Do you have a segment in there where people like is it specifically, hey, we're picking Colin's call today and we're going to listen to it? Or can people also bring up a scenario like, hey, so I had this objection or I had this question. Here's what I said, not sure if it's the best thing. And is there sort of like a group interaction where people will sort of throw out their ideas and then as a team you kind of narrow it down to like here's the best response, and are you sort of documenting that I had an objection handbook where we would do that. But I always found those meetings to be the most helpful because we would just tell everyone show up with a scenario. I would just call it a scenario, right? And you just describe it. You're like, hey, here's the situation. Here's what I said. Here's what they said. And like, here's what I did. And sometimes they would play like the clip of the call. And then we just go around the room and like see like, A, is it something that we already have a best practice for, right? And we like, this is what you say. This is the best thing. If not, we came up with that as a team and we would see what works. And then it would just refine like our documented objection handbook over time. Do you guys do that as well? Or is it specifically we're listening to one call and that's it?
Yes, we listened to the call in its entirety. I like your idea of the snippets. Maybe we'll incorporate that. So thank you. In terms
And
of
it's
the
just
call
when they
review.
need it, right? It's like you don't have to force them to do it, but like when, like I just used to tell them when you run into a situation throughout the week where you think you maybe could have done better, like just add it to a list and we'll like at the end of our call reviews, like we'll bring them up and just see if someone, because someone might be like, I've dealt with that and here's what I do and it works awesome. And like there's just so much that comes out of those combos.
I really like that idea. So I might steal that. Thank you.
Do it.
In
The
terms
reps will like it too. Yeah.
In terms of the actual call review, we pre-select 2 calls per week, just again, because we have 10 AEs, so
Yep.
we need to give everyone a fair sharing here. But usually it'll be a call that I've already heard or something that they've already flagged, or I'll ask in the round robin, like, who would like to share a call this week? And so they listen to it before the call, and they have to leave 2 positive feedbacks and then 2 constructive feedbacks in the comment section. So minimum of 2 bits of feedback. And then we go around the room and we share it
So does
aloud.
everyone listen to it before the meeting?
Yep.
Got it. Okay, cool. So you're
Yeah.
not sitting there listening through the whole thing. Okay, cool.
Nope. And then everybody shares. And so you can dig in, or they can ask questions to give you better advice. So we do it that way. And then on top of that, in our team meetings, I try to make it really collaborative, because I remember sitting through team meetings. I'm sure you do too,
Yeah,
where
it
it's
can get
just like,
brutal.
what's your number? Okay. And you do that around 20 reps, and you're just like, why am I here? So really strong emphasis on, okay, who won a deal this week? So I'll go through the close run report. I will highlight the wins, and I'll ask everybody to speak about their win. Okay, how did you win this deal? Who'd you win it over? What specifically do you think got them to, lean Align's way? So we'll go over that. And also the losses. So kind of to your point, like, it's not as fun to highlight the losses, but we've made it such an environment where we're asking you why you lost, because someone else might have gone in that same scenario and they might have gotten a win out of it. So let's go ahead and share that. So that's kind of how we run the deal strategy calls today.
I love it. Yeah, it's so similar to everything I've done. So, and I think we may be a little bit redundant here, because I think we've sort of touched on some of this stuff, but I want to make sure that I understand for the audience specifically what's working for you guys for outbound today, because as we talked about, a lot has changed. Is there anything else you want to throw in there or reiterate? Because I think we touched on it sort of a little bit throughout.
Yeah, I think just to harp on, relevancy is not the same as personalization. And so
Yes.
relevancy is key. And I'm really sick of people confusing the two, because they're not the same. In fact, they're very polar opposites. Personalization is very superficial. It's surface level. It's me saying, Collin, I noticed you live in New York. I went there once as a child. It's pretty cold. Bundle up. Like,
Yeah. And
that's
it's all
not going to.
automated today too. Like, they didn't even look at your profile. Some AI did it for them.
Precisely. And it doesn't achieve anything. Whereas
Yeah.
relevancy is, Colin, I saw you're doubling your team this year while also looking to cut down on spend. This is how I think I can help, da 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 da, right? So I would encourage everybody to replace personalization with actual relevancy. And so you just really need to get a strong list, and then track different signals if you can. So at Aligned, we track a lot of different product signals. So are they signing up individually? Have multiple individuals signed up? Are they sending out rooms? Are people entering the rooms? We wait for certain signals to tell us now is a good time to reach out, right? Because as we talked about earlier, spray and pray, the percentages have just really dropped over the years. But if you can actually get someone at a strong time, that makes a world of difference. And then also double tapping on building a brand, right? So if you can have people socially engaged in your brand long before your email hits their inbox, your chances of a conversion are going to skyrocket. So I know a lot of your listeners might not be at a brand with a strong marketing presence, right? You might be at a smaller startup. You can still post, and you don't have to post every day. You can post your thoughts once a week. You can get your colleagues on board. But anything that you can do to enhance your social footprint ahead of the call, I always recommend.
I love that, because not only does it work, but you just sold my course. That's what I made a course a few years ago. I think it's been like 5 years or maybe 4 years at this point. I can't remember exactly when it launched, but that was the fundamental concept. Let's take a percentage of your leads and let's set them aside before you reach out to them, and let's put them through this new program where you're going to engage in their content. You're going to try to share some content, maybe through a DM, and you're going to try to do this like sort of calmly and organically over 60 or 90 days to build up some familiarity. And the course goes through a bunch of, ways to actually do that. But the idea is like, let's see if we can get the reply rates up if we take the time to sort of nurture them on social first. And you can do that through company accounts, personal accounts, all sorts of stuff. I mean, LinkedIn is like the best way to do it, but you could also do it on maybe Twitter or whatever. Like we just constantly see that when you take the time to do that and they recognize who you are, then when you reach out cold, it's not really cold and the reply rates go up. And then you're like, okay, well, let's just start doing more of that each month and let's just kind of let that happen. And I think that has a lot to do with why brand deals on LinkedIn have been going through the roof this year. I actually I didn't put it in the questions, but I just realized I want to get your thoughts on that too. On the sales side, I mean, are you guys seeing good demand? Because I know you're making investments into doing brand partnerships. For those who don't know, that basically means you're paying creators on LinkedIn to talk about Align to their audience and to, put that in front of more people. Has that been, I imagine it's working because you guys are still doing it. Has that just been like more of what Gal was able to do and it just sort of amplifies that same strategy?
Yeah, it's a big part of our strategy because if you think about it, each creator or each person on LinkedIn has an entirely different audience, and they also have a different way that they use the tool. And so combining those two, you unlock new people and you enhance your reach, which is always the goal of marketing, right? Marketing, whether you're doing it via SEO on the back end and tracking your CPLs and trying to get into dark circles and dark webs, it's all about just spreading your reach. And so influencer marketing is a great way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've done some brand deals with you guys and they always do really well. And just shout out to Todd because he's one of the best that I've worked with on this, and Todd's on your team. And, sometimes you go back and forth on these brand deals. They give you some feedback on what you wrote or whatnot. And like, sometimes people just like destroy your post, and like Todd is amazing. Like he really knows how to write about your product. He really knows how to make it interesting and engaging. And like every time he's added something into the post, it's just like phenomenal. And it's just every time I think that I've seen anyone really from your team like talking about Aligned on LinkedIn, it's like they're crushing it out of the park. So I don't know if that's just coming from top down and you guys are all just sort of, learning from each other. But I would say Aligned is top tier when it comes to the LinkedIn game. There's no question about that.
Yeah, it's definitely a team effort, and Todd is phenomenal. So, +1 to shout out to Todd.
Yeah.
And we actually just got off of a call with LinkedIn because we partner with them. Actually, the big event that we're hosting in a few weeks, Order of the Closers at Dreamforce, for AEs, top AEs and CSMs, is partnered with LinkedIn, and they pull our stats and they show us, how you show up in searches.
Oh, nice.
Compared to other companies in your industry or in your realm, and we're so far up and to the right, it's not even funny. Like I kind of feel bad almost, but not for some of our competitors because it's just leaps and bounds ahead. And it's an everyday intentional strategy, right? You can't take you can't take too many days off, and otherwise the algorithm gets all wonky. And so it really is team effort, largely driven and supported by Todd and Serena and the whole marketing team. So yeah.
You were saying you're working closely with LinkedIn. I was going to just say, I wonder if like once they start bragging about your success, that now they're like, well, now we need to make sure they keep succeeding, give you like a boost in the algorithm or something.
You would think it doesn't quite work like that.
It doesn't though. Yeah, it doesn't.
We are all subject to the finicky algo. So,
but I do think it pays to have a positive relationship with LinkedIn. And I think it pays to be a paying customer of LinkedIn as well, from a brand perspective, not necessarily as an individual. But I do notice that when I've done brand partnerships with like companies who are actual customers of LinkedIn, they're paying to boost, they're paying, for job postings, all this stuff, like their stuff just tends to perform better than the ones who you can tell they've never spent $1 at LinkedIn. And I don't necessarily think there's like a magical button that they're pushing. I think it's probably more that they're just like more invested in the whole process or anything. But it is something that I've noticed. But I just wanted to shout it out because I think, I found this post that I wrote like 6 years ago. I had been looking for it for so long, and I eventually came across a bookmark where I had saved it. And it was where I started talking about how I thought that like these brand deals that we see on like Instagram and stuff will someday like be on LinkedIn. And everyone, like the comments were just like people like, no, fuck that. Like, I don't want that. Da, 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 da. And I'm just like, I just think that like there's so much more value here that if people are selling like Bang energy drink on Instagram, like what does that cost? $3? Like, how can you make money? But if you're selling software, if I can get one person to check out your software, like it would be thousands of dollars. So I just remember thinking like this has to catch on at some point. And like it eventually did. Like a few years later, it just started. And I would say the last 2 years, it has just taken off. And one thing I'll throw in there is I wanted to just give some advice to people on the brand partnerships is like, if you're going to get into it, do not look at this as like a 30-day test or a 90-day test. You're going to do this for a year, for 2 years, and you need to plan on doing it long term. It is, similar. I would say it's even more long term than cold calling or outbound, but like you can't just do it for a day or a week. You can't just hire 3 influencers this month and be like, well, we didn't get any leads from it. So it's like, well, you think that that's how fast it works. Like what you want to do is become the brand that is constantly being talked about. And Aligned has achieved that.
That's really, really sound advice because when I first started posting, I didn't even write an aligned pitch for probably 4 months. It was very intentional, pour into the community, thought leadership,
Yeah.
share your knowledge. And then once you have built some trust and credibility, just like you have to do in a sale, right?
Yep.
Then we can start casually pitching a line. So yeah, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. It's a long-term play. And
Yes.
good to know if, for whatever reason, Collin Cadmus LLC doesn't work out, you can be a fortune teller because you called it. LinkedIn influencing
I think it was obvious. I think it was obvious. Yeah.
Well, now there's all these agencies, Colin, where agencies, kind of like a sport agent, will represent creators and they'll go
Yeah.
to these companies on your behalf and they'll negotiate on your behalf. And there's entire marketplaces now. I don't know if you're familiar with Passion Fruit,
I'm
but
on
they're a
it. Yeah.
marketplace and they just got VC funding. They just got $1.5 million VC funding. So
They're actually hiring a head of sales. So shout out. I just saw that posting and it's a New York role and remote. So if anyone's looking, take a look.
there you go.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it.
They're crushing it. I have mixed feelings on all the agencies and stuff. I think there's a place in the market for it. I think when you're dealing with like, let's say I wanted, if someone wanted to hire you to do a brand deal, like you have a full-time job. So you probably want to spend as little time as possible on that. Whereas someone like me, like I don't mind negotiating my own deals. I have the time to do it or whatever. But I've seen just so many different approaches to how it can work. There's a lot of money getting thrown into it. But I do just caution anyone, like if your thought is I'm going to spend 30 grand on this and then just see what happens, it's not the move. Like you need to go long term. You need to be willing to spend a bunch of money before you're going to even know like what's going to happen. But it's the same thing as any advertising. Like, do you think McDonald's knows how much they're getting from their radio commercials or from the billboards that they put up? They don't know. They just know that if they got rid of all of those things, it would be significantly less people talking and thinking about McDonald's, right? And so you just have to know at the end of the day, if you have dozens or hundreds of people talking about your product all the time on LinkedIn, is that better or worse? And if you're willing to make that investment, then just do it and don't overanalyze it would be my advice. 2 more questions and we can go pretty quick on these. The last one will be, about Aligned and how everyone uses it. But right here, I want to go on what AI tools you guys are using besides Aligned. Any shout outs to some major tools there or any lessons learned, anything that was a waste of time, anywhere you want to go on that.
Yes, I would say for anyone listening, you are not ever tied to your tech stack. So I know an eval can be lengthy and it can be tedious, but if you're especially in a startup or a fast growing org, the direction and the needs of your org are going to change regularly. And so we've done complete overhauls of our tech stack. So that's my biggest learning. The second one would be with AI. Everyone's just slapping AI on the name, making it flashy. Just because it has AI doesn't mean it's going to be effective. And so I usually just ask 3 questions when I'm evaluating. Does it save meaningful time for my team? Does it actually improve the quality of the buyer experience? So does it help our clients? And will my reps actually use it? And so if the answer to any of those is no, we don't procure it. And a few tools that we do use and love are shout out Sybil. So for call intelligence, we use a power dialer, Nooks. We use Apollo for our sequences, Full Enrich for enriching, Aligned, of course, in everything that we do. And we do also leverage some ChatGPT and Claude for extra support.
That's a good stack. It sounds like you've got some discipline to keep it minimal.
Trying.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I do think it's good to have sort of one person, whether it's yourself or someone on RevOps or whatever, who sort of just owns the final decision, so that, like, we made this mistake at Aircall where we kind of just let anyone sign up for like anything. I don't mean like necessarily at the rep level, but at the manager or director level. And so you might have like a manager of marketing who signed up for like High Spot. So she's like, I want to figure out how to share stuff more easily with the sales team. And then, you know, you have someone else on RevOps who signs up for something else, and someone else over here. And it got so bad after a while. We're just like, there's way too many tools and we're probably not using all of them. And so eventually we're just like, okay, like we need one person to be the architect of like the entire, you know, tech stack. It doesn't mean you can't come to them with ideas, but someone needs to sort of like own it, or it can get out of control pretty quickly. But sounds like you guys have it. You've got it. I don't see any major overlap between most of those tools, which is good. But lastly, you know, we've talked a lot about it, but what's the quick pitch for what is Aligned and who should use it?
The $1,000,000 question. Well, Aligned is an AI deal workspace that gives sellers and buyers one shared space to manage everything that is going to be required to get your deal done. So think about after you hop off a discovery call, right? You're going to send follow-up emails. You might send your slide deck. Once you get to proposal, you're going to send one of those, or maybe you're sending the proposal to finance or the CFO instead of your champion. With Aligned, you put it all in one centralized space, keeps it very organized for the buyer and the seller. And it also gives you, the seller, inside visibility into who's actually interacting with that space, right? So are people actually looking at the proposal or are they not? And so, for example, we had a deal that we sent a proposal to and we hadn't heard from them. And so I had a rep pinging me, I haven't heard from them. Should we shave a little bit off? Should we discount quite a bit? And I said, okay, well, let's hop in the room. Well, the room showed us that they were spending significant time on the competitive analysis. So we reached out and we offered to give them a walkthrough of the nuances between the competitors. And that's exactly what they needed. That unstuck the deal. And from there, we moved into procurement. So given that deals today are now mostly dying in the space between the meetings, Aligned helps you move deals forward by keeping everything consolidated and also giving you the visibility to drive deals forward.
Lots of data that you're getting on the back end, right? To see like who's looking at what, how much time are they spending on certain topics, you know, who's engaged in the process, who's not, and like, are they sharing it with other people, right? That's a big one, because like sometimes you don't know who's sort of behind the scenes in the process, and you think you're talking to the decision maker, but then you realize like, I think there's maybe someone who they keep going back to. And so you're able to kind of figure that out, right?
Precisely, yes. So you can see everybody who enters the room, whether you were aware that they should be part of the deal or not. And then we'll enrich the LinkedIn data on the back end so that you can see their role, their involvement, how much time they're spending. Yes, a lot of stakeholder visibility.
Awesome. This has been great. We've got so much in here. I think everyone's going to learn a lot. Anything you want to plug in here? I mean, I've got, we'll put some links in the show notes. I've got your Meredith, merediththesalescoach.com. We've got alignedup.com. Anything else that you want to plug or throw in here? Are you hiring for any roles? Anything you're recruiting for?
We're always hiring for great AEs, CSMs, BDRs. So yes, check us out at alignedup.com. Add me on LinkedIn. Check me out at merediththesalescoach.com. And Collin, thank you again so much for having me.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.